The morning sun cast long shadows across the Swiss mountains as Admiral Jack Morrison walked through the halls of the United Earth Defense Command. His boots echoed against the polished floors of the building that had been completed just 3 months ago. Nobody had expected to use it so soon. Today was the day humanity would meet its first alien visitor. Morrison adjusted his uniform and checked his watch. In 10 minutes, history would change forever. He had fought in wars across 3 continents, commanded fleets in the asteroid belt, and helped establish the first colonies on Mars, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. President Susan Taylor stood waiting in the main conference room, her hands folded behind her back as she stared out the massive windows overlooking Lake Geneva. She had been elected 2 years ago on a platform of unity and space exploration. Now she faced a challenge no human leader had ever confronted. "Any word from the advance team?" she asked without turning around. Defense Secretary Carl Newman looked up from his tablet. "The alien ship entered Earth's atmosphere 20 minutes ago. Our satellites tracked it coming down over the Atlantic." "It's unlike anything we've ever seen," Morrison nodded grimly. For the past week, Earth's deep space monitoring stations had detected the approaching vessel. It was enormous, easily the size of a small city, and it moved through space without any visible propulsion system. Every attempt to communicate with it had been ignored until yesterday, when a single message had been broadcast to every government on Earth. The message was simple. The Galactic Council requests an immediate meeting with Earth's leadership. Prepare your most senior representatives. The alien ship had landed in the ocean 200 kilometers from the Swiss coast. A smaller craft had separated from it and was now approaching the Defense Command headquarters. Through the windows, Morrison could see the strange vessel descending from the clouds. It was beautiful in a terrifying way. The ship seemed to be made of crystal and metal fused together, shifting between transparent and solid as it moved. No human technology could create such a thing. The craft made no sound as it settled onto the landing pad that had been hastily constructed on the building's roof. "They're here?" Newman said, his voice tight with tension. Morrison straightened his shoulders. "Remember, we represent all of humanity today. Whatever they want, we listen first and speak carefully." President Taylor turned from the window. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but Morrison knew she possessed a core of steel that had carried her through a lifetime of political battles. "I've been thinking about this moment since I was a child reading science fiction books. I never imagined it would feel so frightening." The door to the conference room opened, and Captain Ryan Davis entered with a small security detail. "The alien representative is ready to meet with you. I have to warn you, it's not what we expected." Morrison raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "You'll see for yourself in a moment, sir." The alien that entered the room was tall, easily 3 meters in height, with a body that seemed to be made of living crystal. Its form shifted and changed as it moved, sometimes appearing solid, sometimes translucent. Where a human would have eyes, it had points of bright blue light. It wore no clothing, but patterns of different colors flowed across its surface like slow lightning. "I am Zephyr 9 of the Galactic Council," the being said. Its voice came from everywhere and nowhere, speaking perfect English with no accent. "I serve as an ambassador to primitive species." President Taylor stepped forward. "Welcome to Earth. I am Susan Taylor, President of the United Earth Government. This is Admiral Jack Morrison, our military commander, and Carl Newman, our defense secretary." Zephyr 9's form pulsed with what might have been acknowledgement. "Your titles are noted but irrelevant. I am here to deliver a message from the Galactic Council to your species." The crystal being began to glow more brightly. "The Galactic Council has observed your recent expansion into space. You have established colonies on multiple worlds within your solar system and have begun construction of vessels capable of interstellar travel. This expansion must cease immediately." Morrison felt his jaw tighten, but he remained silent. President Taylor kept her expression neutral. "May I ask why?" "Your species demonstrates the classic patterns of aggressive expansion that threaten galactic peace. In the past 50,000 years, the Council has encountered 17 species with similar characteristics. All were either contained or eliminated before they could spread their violence to other systems. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Newman's face had gone pale, but President Taylor's voice remained steady. "What exactly are you proposing?" Zephyr Nine's form shifted, becoming more solid and imposing. "The Galactic Council offers Earth a choice. You have 30 standard galactic cycles to comply with our requirements. You must cease all expansion beyond your home system, dismantle your military space fleets, and submit to Council oversight. In return, your species will be permitted to continue existing on Earth under our protection." "And if we refuse?" Morrison asked, finally speaking. The alien's blue lights flared brighter. "No species has ever refused a Council ultimatum. The consequences would be severe. The Council commands the military forces of 847 advanced civilizations. Your technology is primitive compared to ours. Resistance would result in the complete destruction of your species." President Taylor walked slowly around the conference table, her mind racing. "These 30 cycles you mentioned, how long is that in Earth terms?" "Approximately one of your months, I see." "And this council of yours, how long has it existed?" "The Council has maintained galactic peace for over 50 millennia. We have never encountered a species that posed a significant threat to our authority." Morrison exchanged glances with Newman. Both men could see where this was heading, and neither liked it. "Ambassador Zephyr 9, President Taylor said carefully, "humanity appreciates the Council's concern for galactic peace. However, this is a significant decision that will affect every human being alive. We need time to consider your proposal and discuss it with our people." The alien's form pulsed with what seemed like impatience. "There is nothing to consider. The Council's decision is final. You will submit or face extinction. Nevertheless," Taylor continued, "we require time to prepare our response. Our governmental systems don't allow for immediate decisions of this magnitude." Zephyr 9 remained still for a long moment, its crystal body cycling through different levels of transparency. "Very well. The Council anticipated that primitive species might require additional time to accept reality. You have 30 cycles to prepare your submission. I will return to collect your answer." The alien turned toward the door, then paused. "I should mention that the Council has dealt with species similar to yours before. They all believed they were special, that their situation was unique. None of them were correct. Do not make the mistake of thinking you are different." After Zephyr 9 left, the three humans stood in silence for several minutes. Finally, President Taylor moved to the window and looked out at the alien ship rising into the sky. "Well," she said quietly, "that could have gone better." Morrison joined her at the window. "What are you thinking, Madam President?" Taylor was quiet for a long moment, watching the crystal ship disappear into the clouds. "I'm thinking about my grandfather. He fought in World War II, lived through the Cold War, and always told me that freedom isn't free. He said that some things are worth fighting for, no matter the odds." Newman cleared his throat. "Madam President, with respect, we're talking about an alien civilization that controls nearly 1,000 worlds. They have technology we can barely comprehend. This isn't like any war humanity has ever fought." "No," Taylor agreed, turning from the window, "it's not. But the principle remains the same. They want us to surrender our freedom, our right to explore the stars, our future as a species. They want us to become their pets." Morrison nodded slowly. "What are your orders, Madam President?" Susan Taylor looked at both men, and for the first time since the alien had left, she smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Gentlemen, I believe it's time to convene the Global Security Council. We have a war to prepare for." The Global Security Council meeting lasted 18 hours. Representatives from every major nation sat around the massive table in the underground command center beneath Geneva. The debate was intense, but the conclusion was unanimous. Earth would not surrender. General Lisa Parker stood before the wall of screens showing Earth's military assets scattered across the solar system. Mining stations, research outposts, and the small fleet of exploration vessels that humanity had built over the past decade. It wasn't much to fight a galactic war with, but it was what they had. "Ladies and gentlemen," she addressed the room, full of military commanders, "we have 29 days to turn our exploration fleet into a fighting force. I won't lie to you. This is the most difficult challenge our species has ever faced." Commander Ryan Davis raised his hand. He was young for his rank, barely 35, but he had spent more time in space than anyone else in the room. "General, what exactly are we working with?" Parker touched her tablet and the screens changed to show Earth space assets. "We have 47 ships capable of interstellar travel. Most are mining vessels or research ships. We have 12 ships that could be called military, though they were designed for asteroid defense and piracy prevention, not galactic war." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the numbers. 47 ships against the might of 847 civilizations. "However," Parker continued, "we have some advantages. First, we're fighting for our survival. Second, we're fighting on our home ground. Third, and most importantly, we're human." Dr. Amy Brooks spoke up from the back of the room. She was the head of Earth's Xenobiology Research Team, a position that had been largely theoretical until 3 days ago. "General, we've been studying the recording of the alien ambassador's visit. There are some interesting points." "Go ahead, Doctor." Brooks stood and walked to the front of the room. She was a small woman with short brown hair and thick glasses, but her voice carried authority when she spoke about her work. "The alien called us primitive, but its technology showed some curious limitations. The ship made no sound when it landed, which suggests advanced propulsion, but the hull showed microfractures that indicate material stress. Their technology might be advanced, but it's not perfect." Admiral Morrison leaned forward. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we need to study their technology more closely. The ambassador's shuttle is still on our roof." "I recommend we examine it immediately." General Parker nodded. "Approved." "What else?" "The alien mentioned that they've encountered 17 species like us before. All were contained or eliminated. That means they have standard procedures for dealing with aggressive species. If we can understand their tactics, we might be able to counter them." Commander Davis stood up. "General, I'd like permission to begin converting our mining fleet for combat operations. The asteroid miners are tough ships, built to operate in dangerous environments. With modifications, they could serve as the backbone of our fleet." "Granted. What do you need?" "Time, resources, and every engineer we can spare. The mining ships have powerful drilling equipment that could be weaponized. Their cargo holds can be converted to carry fighters. Most importantly, they're designed to operate independently for months at a time." Parker made notes on her tablet. "Captain Steve Johnson, I want you to start training special forces for space combat. We don't know what kind of fighting we'll face, but we need to be ready for anything." Johnson was a veteran of 3 wars, a tall man with graying hair and scars on his hands from countless battles. "General, my men are trained for Earth combat. Fighting in space on alien ships, that's something completely different. Then figure it out. We have less than a month." The meeting continued for hours, with each department head outlining their preparations. Engineer Katie Stone presented plans for new weapon systems. Communications Director Bob Wilson discussed strategies for coordinating the defense of Earth's colonies. Medical Chief Dr. Helen Carter talked about preparing for casualties on a scale humanity had never experienced. As the meeting ended, Dr. Brooks approached Admiral Morrison. "Sir, I need to ask you something privately." Morrison followed her into a smaller conference room. "What is it, Doctor?" "I've been thinking about what the alien said. 847 civilizations under Council control. That's a lot of species that have been forced to submit over 50,000 years. Your point?" "My point is that some of them might not be happy about it. If we're going to fight the Council, we might not have to fight alone." Morrison considered this. "You think we could find allies among the Council's subjects?" "I think it's worth trying." The alien was very confident, maybe too confident. That suggests they haven't faced real resistance in a long time. If we can inspire other species to rebel, we might have a chance. 3 days later, the work began in earnest. The mining ship construction yards in Earth's asteroid belt became military factories. Workers who had spent their lives building peaceful vessels now created weapons of war. The conversion process was brutal and fast. Commander Davis stood in the main hangar of the mining station series base, watching as teams of engineers stripped the civilian equipment from the ship New Horizons. The vessel had been designed to haul ice from the outer system. Now it was being fitted with missile launchers and armor plating. How long until she's ready? Davis asked Chief Engineer Tom Martinez. 2 weeks if we work around the clock. The hull modifications are the hardest part. We're basically rebuilding the ship from the inside out. Davis nodded. Similar work was happening on 46 other ships throughout the solar system. It was the largest military mobilization in human history, and it was happening in secret. The Council's spy satellites, if they had any, would hopefully see normal mining operations. Meanwhile, Dr. Brooks had made a breakthrough. Her team had been studying the alien shuttle for 72 hours straight. The crystal and metal hull was unlike anything in human technology, but they had found something important. The ship's shielding operates on a specific frequency, she explained to General Parker over a secure video link. It's incredibly advanced, but it has a weakness. Human military radar operates on frequencies that seem to interfere with their shield harmonics. Are you saying our primitive technology can actually hurt them? I'm saying it's possible. We need to run more tests, but if I'm right, our existing weapon systems might be more effective than they expect. The discovery energized the defense preparations. If human technology could penetrate Council shields, their numerical advantage might not be as overwhelming as it seemed. Captain Johnson's training program was producing results as well. His Special Forces teams were learning to fight in zero gravity, to navigate alien ship designs, and to use weapons in the vacuum of space. The training was brutal, but the soldiers adapted quickly. The key, Johnson told his trainees, is to remember that we're not just fighting for Earth, we're fighting for the right to exist as free human beings. That's worth any sacrifice. As the days passed, Earth's transformation accelerated. Factories that had produced consumer goods now made armor and weapons. Scientists who had studied peaceful applications of technology now created instruments of war. Children too young to fight helped in factories and farms, understanding that their future depended on the adults' success. The most significant change was psychological. Humanity had always been a species that fought among itself. Now, for the first time in history, every human being shared the same enemy. National borders became meaningless. Political differences were set aside. The species that had spent centuries fighting each other now stood, united against a common threat. Admiral Morrison stood in the command center, watching the reports flow in from across the solar system. Ship conversions ahead of schedule, new. Weapon systems showing promise. Training programs producing soldiers ready for impossible odds. Sir, Commander Davis reported, the fleet will be ready in 22 days. It's not much, but it's everything we have, Morrison nodded. And Dr. Brooks? Her team thinks they've found 3 more weaknesses in Council technology. Nothing guaranteed, but possible advantages. Good. What about Captain Johnson's Special Forces? Ready for deployment. They're trained for ship-to-ship combat, sabotage, and deep space operations. Morrison looked at the countdown timer on the main screen. 22 days until Earth's response was due. 22 days to prepare for a war that would determine humanity's fate. Commander, send a message to all fleet units. Tell them we're not just building ships, we're building humanity's future. Every rivet, every weapon, every system they install is a declaration that we will not surrender. As the message went out across the solar system, millions of humans continued their desperate preparations. They were about to face the impossible, but they would face it as one species, united in defiance. The 29th day arrived with a gray dawn over Lake Geneva. President Susan Taylor stood in her private office, looking out at the mountains where snow was beginning to fall. In 6 hours, the Galactic Council would expect Earth's surrender. Instead, They would receive something no species had ever given them before, Admiral? Morrison entered the office carrying a thick folder. Madam President, the fleet is ready. All 47 ships are armed and in position. Commander Davis reports that the crews are prepared for immediate deployment. Taylor turned from the window. She had aged years in the past month, but her eyes held a fire that had not been there before. And Dr. Brooks? Her team has confirmed 3 major weaknesses in Council technology. Their shields can be disrupted by our radar frequencies. Their hull materials show stress fractures under sustained bombardment, and their weapon systems have a recycling delay that we can exploit. Casualties? Morrison's expression grew grim. Estimates range from 60 to 80% losses in the first engagement, but the computer models show we have a real chance of victory if we can maintain the element of surprise. Taylor nodded slowly. She had read the reports, seen the projections, and spoken with the families of the men and women who would likely die in the coming hours. The weight of those conversations pressed down on her shoulders like a physical burden. The broadcast. Equipment is ready? Yes, Madam President. We'll be transmitting to every inhabited world in the galaxy. Dr. Brooks' team used the alien shuttle's communication system to access the Council's network. Every species under their control will hear our message. The door opened and General Parker entered with Defense Secretary Newman. Both looked as tired as Taylor felt, but their determination was unshakable. The ground forces are ready, Parker reported. Captain Johnson's special forces are aboard the lead ships. If we can get close enough to any Council vessels, we're prepared for boarding actions. Newman checked his watch. Madam President, the Council's ambassador will be here in 2 hours. Are you certain about this course of action? Taylor looked at each of them in turn. These were the people who had spent their lives serving humanity, and now they were asking her to lead their species into a war that might destroy them all. Gentlemen, I've been thinking about this decision for 29 days. I've spoken with world leaders, military commanders, and ordinary citizens. The conclusion is always the same. We cannot surrender our freedom, our future, or our children's right to reach for the stars. She moved to her desk and picked up a single sheet of paper. This is our declaration. I want you to hear it before we broadcast it to the galaxy. Taylor cleared her throat and began to read. To the Galactic Council and all species under their dominion. 29 days ago you delivered an ultimatum to humanity. You demanded that we surrender our freedom, abandon our colonies, and submit to your rule. You threatened us with extinction if we refused. Her voice grew stronger as she continued. Today we give you our answer. The people of Earth reject your ultimatum in its entirety. We will not surrender our freedom. We will not abandon our colonies. We will not submit to your tyranny. Morrison felt his chest swell with pride as he listened to the words that would soon echo across the galaxy. As of this moment, Earth declares war on the Galactic Council and any species that supports their oppression. We do not seek conquest. We seek only the right to exist as free beings in a free galaxy. We call upon all species who have suffered under Council rule to rise up and reclaim their freedom. Taylor set the paper down and looked at her advisors. We are not naive. We know the odds against us. But we also know that some things are worth fighting for, regardless of the cost. Human history is filled with examples of people who chose to fight impossible odds rather than live as slaves. 2 hours later, the crystal ship descended from the clouds and landed on the roof of the Defense Command building. Zephyr 9 emerged from the vessel, its form shifting between solid and transparent as it moved. The alien ambassador seemed confident, expecting to receive humanity's surrender. Instead, it found President Taylor waiting in the same conference room where their first meeting had taken place. This time, however, the room was filled with cameras and broadcast equipment. Ambassador Zephyr 9, Taylor said formally, humanity has prepared its response to the Council's ultimatum. The alien's blue lights pulsed with what might have been satisfaction. Excellent. The Council will be pleased with your species' wisdom in accepting reality. I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding, Taylor replied. We're not here to surrender. Before Zephyr 9 could respond, the broadcast began. Cameras focused on President Taylor as she addressed not just the alien in the room, but every intelligent being in the galaxy. "People of the galaxy," she began, "my name is Susan Taylor, and I speak for the human species of Earth. Today, we face a choice that will determine the future of our civilization and perhaps yours as well." The alien's form suddenly became rigid, its lights flashing in what was clearly alarm. "What is this?" The Council did not authorize any galactic broadcast. Taylor ignored the interruption and continued. 29 days ago, the Galactic Council threatened Earth with destruction unless we surrendered our freedom. They told us that no species had ever refused their ultimatum. They were wrong. Across the galaxy, on thousands of worlds, billions of beings who had lived under Council rule for generations suddenly heard something they had never heard before: defiance. Today, humanity declares war on the Galactic Council. We will not surrender our freedom. We will not abandon our right to explore the stars. We will not submit to tyranny, no matter how ancient or powerful. Zephyr 9's form began to shift rapidly, cycling through colors that showed its agitation. "This is madness. Your species will be destroyed. The Council has the power to eliminate entire star systems." "Perhaps," Taylor acknowledged, still speaking to the cameras, "but we have something the Council has forgotten. We have the courage to say no to oppression. We have the determination to fight for our children's future. And we have the hope that other species will join us in reclaiming the galaxy." The broadcast continued for 10 more minutes, with Taylor outlining humanity's reasons for war and calling on oppressed species throughout the galaxy to rise up. When it ended, Zephyr 9 was vibrating with rage. "You have doomed your species," the alien said, its voice now harsh and mechanical. "The Council will mobilize every ship, every weapon, every warrior to crush this rebellion. You will not survive." "The weak," Taylor stood up, her expression calm. "Ambassador, you can tell your Council that humanity is ready. We've been preparing for this fight our entire history. Every war we've fought, every battle we've won or lost, has been practice for this moment." Zephyr 9 began moving toward the door, its form now completely solid and radiating menace. "The Council will remember this day as the moment of primitive. Species chose extinction over wisdom, and we'll remember it as the day humanity chose freedom over slavery." As the alien ship departed, Admiral Morrison turned to President Taylor. "Madam President, our deep space sensors are detecting movement in the Alpha Centauri system. It looks like a Council fleet." Taylor nodded. "Order Commander Davis to begin the attack. Let's show the galaxy what humans do when we're backed into a corner." 6 hours later, the war began in earnest. Commander Davis led the first human assault on the Council's nearest outpost in the Alpha Centauri system. The converted mining ship New Horizons spearheaded the attack, its hull bristling with improvised weapons. The Council's defenders were caught completely off guard. In 50,000 years of rule, no species had ever attacked them first. Their ships, beautiful and advanced, had been designed for subjugation, not warfare. The human ships fought with a savagery that shocked the aliens. When the New Horizons weapons failed, Davis ordered a ramming attack that split the Council's command ship in half. When the mining vessel Phoenix was surrounded, its crew detonated the reactor, taking 3 enemy ships with them. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Council's Alpha Centauri outpost was a field of debris, and humanity had won its first victory against impossible odds. But the real victory was happening across the galaxy. On world after world, species that had lived under Council rule for millennia heard about humanity's defiance and began to ask themselves a question they had never dared ask before: what if we said no? The war had begun, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. News of humanity's victory at Alpha Centauri spread through the galaxy faster than the Council had thought possible. Within 3 days, uprisings began on 12 different worlds. Species that had been silent for thousands of years suddenly found their voices and started fighting back. The Council's response was swift and brutal. They dispatched enforcement fleets to crush the rebellions, confident that overwhelming force would restore order. They had used this strategy successfully for 50 millennia. But they had never faced humans before. Major Tony Clark crouched behind the twisted metal remains of a supply depot on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. The Council's ground forces had landed 6 hours ago, expecting to find a defenseless human colony. Instead, they found a carefully prepared trap. "Second squad, hold your position," Clark whispered into his radio. "Let them get closer to the minefield." The alien soldiers moved through the ice caverns with military precision. They were tall, insect-like creatures with 4 arms and natural armor plating. Their weapons could cut through steel, and their technology was centuries ahead of anything humans possessed, but they had one critical weakness. They fought by the book. The Council's military doctrine had been perfected over thousands of years of easy victories. Every battle plan, every strategy, every tactical manual assumed they would face enemies who fought like civilized beings. Humans, as the aliens were about to learn, did not fight like civilized beings. "Now," Clark ordered, the ice cavern exploded. In a chain reaction of hidden charges, the alien advance guard disappeared in a cloud of steam and debris. Before the survivors could recover, Clark's soldiers emerged from hidden positions throughout the cavern system. Firing improvised weapons and throwing homemade explosives, the battle for Europa lasted 3 days. When it ended, the Council's ground forces had been completely destroyed. Not a single alien soldier escaped to report what had happened. Meanwhile, in the asteroid belt, Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell was learning that space combat was nothing like the simulations. Her experimental fighter craft, built from mining equipment and salvaged alien technology, shook violently as she dodged plasma bolts from a Council patrol ship. "Control, this is Blue Leader," she radioed back to the command ship. "The target is heavily shielded." "Our weapons aren't penetrating. Blue Leader, this is Control. Remember Dr. Brooks' frequency analysis? Try switching to radar guidance." Mitchell flipped the switch that activated her ship's mining radar system. The powerful electromagnetic beam that had once been used to map asteroid compositions now served a different purpose. The Council ship's shields flickered and failed. "Got them," Mitchell said, launching her missiles. The Council patrol ship exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the darkness of space. The victory was small, but significant. It proved that Dr. Brooks had been right about the Council's technological weaknesses. More importantly, it proved that humans could win. On Earth, Admiral Morrison stood in the command center watching displays that showed battles raging across the solar system. The Council had committed massive forces to crush humanity's rebellion, but the fighting was not going as they had expected. "Sir," Commander Davis reported from his flagship, "we've received surrender requests from 3 Council vessels. Apparently their crews are slaves from conquered species. They want to join us," Morrison smiled grimly. "Accepted. Have them dock with our support ships for debriefing. And Commander, treat them well. Word will spread that we're different from the Council." The defections were becoming a serious problem for the Council. Many of their crews were conscripts from species that had been conquered centuries ago. When they saw humans fighting with such determination, some began to remember what freedom meant. Captain Steve Johnson was about to give the Council something new to worry about. His Special Forces team had been training for weeks to board and capture enemy ships. Now, floating in the darkness between Mars and Jupiter, they were about to put that training to the test. "Remember," Johnson told his team over the radio, "we're not trying to destroy this ship. We want to capture it intact. The intelligence value alone will justify the risk." The Council dreadnought hung in space like a sleeping giant. It was 5 times larger than any human ship, its crystal and metal hull gleaming with alien beauty. Sensors showed nearly 3,000 crew members aboard. Johnson's team moved through space using small thrusters, approaching the enemy ship from its blind spot. Their suits were painted black and equipped with jamming devices to avoid detection. Getting close was the easy part. What came next would test everything they had learned about fighting aliens, the boarding pods attached to the dreadnoughts, hull with magnetic clamps. Johnson's men began cutting through the outer armor with plasma torches, working as quietly as possible. When the breach was complete, they flooded into the alien ship. The interior was unlike anything in human design. Corridors twisted in impossible directions, rooms had no obvious purpose, and the lighting came from crystals embedded in the walls. But Johnson's team had studied the alien shuttle for weeks. They knew how to navigate council ships. "Alpha team, secure the bridge," Johnson ordered. "Beta team, take engineering. Charlie team, you're with me. We're going after the command center." The fighting that followed was brutal and chaotic. The alien crew fought desperately to repel the boarders, but they had never faced humans in close combat before. Johnson's soldiers used tactics that no civilized species would consider. They fought dirty, used improvised weapons, and showed no mercy. The most important moment came when Johnson's team reached the ship's computer core. Dr. Brooks had given them specific instructions about what to look for. If they could access the Council's military database, Earth would gain intelligence that could change the course of the war. "Sergeant Wilson, can you crack their system?" Johnson asked. Wilson was a computer specialist who had learned alien technology by taking apart the ambassador's shuttle. He plugged his equipment into the ship's main computer and began working. "The security is tough, Captain, but it's designed to keep out other aliens. Human software is so different that their defenses don't recognize it as a threat." 20 minutes later, Wilson had broken through. The information they found was staggering. The Council's complete military deployment, the locations of their main bases, and most importantly, the truth about their empire. "Captain," Wilson said, his voice filled with amazement, "according to this database, the Council only has about 50 ships total that are actually crewed by their own species. Everything else is crewed by slaves from conquered worlds." Johnson felt his heart racing. "Are you saying their entire military is made up of conscripts?" "That's exactly what I'm saying. And sir, there's more. The database shows that there have been over 300 rebellions in the past 1,000 years. The Council has been fighting constantly to keep their empire together. The capture of the Dreadnought was the turning point of the war. Within hours, human intelligence analysts were broadcasting the captured information to every rebel group in the galaxy. The message was simple: the Council was not invincible. They were a small group of tyrants controlling an empire of slaves. The effect was immediate and dramatic. On worlds throughout the galaxy, species that had submitted to Council rule for generations suddenly realized they outnumbered their oppressors by millions to one. The rebellions that had started as isolated uprisings became a galaxy-wide revolution. The Council tried to respond with force, but their military was crumbling. Ship after ship defected to the rebels. Crews that had been forced to fight for their oppressors suddenly turned their weapons on their masters. The empire that had lasted 50,000 years was collapsing in a matter of weeks on Earth. President Taylor watched the reports flooding in from across the galaxy. Humanity's declaration of war had become something far greater than anyone had imagined. They had not just fought for their own freedom. They had sparked the liberation of the entire galaxy. "Madam President," Admiral Morrison said, "we're receiving requests for military assistance from 47 different species. They want human advisors to help organize their rebellions." Taylor nodded. "Send them everything they need? Ships, weapons, training, whatever it takes. We didn't start this war to build a human empire. We started it to build a free galaxy." The war was far from over, but the tide had turned. The Council still controlled their home systems and their most powerful fleets, but they were no longer fighting a single rebellious species. They were fighting a galaxy that had finally learned to say no. The Council's home system was a fortress that had never been attacked in 50,000 years. 7 planets orbited a dying red star, each one covered with cities that housed billions of Council members. Massive defense stations floated in space. Between the worlds, their weapons powerful enough to destroy entire fleets. Admiral Jack Morrison stood on the bridge of the flagship Earth's Pride, looking at the tactical display that showed the combined rebel fleet. What had started as 47 human ships had grown into an armada of over 3,000 vessels from dozens of species. Former slaves now fought alongside their liberators, united by a common dream of freedom. "Admiral," Commander Davis reported, "all fleet units are in position. The Kelton ships are ready to begin the assault on the outer defense ring. The Vorthan heavy cruisers will target the orbital stations." Morrison nodded. The plan was complex, involving the coordinated attack of 23 different species, each contributing their unique strengths to the battle. It was the largest military operation in galactic history, and humanity was leading it. What about the Council's main fleet? Still defending their homeworld. Our intelligence suggests they have about 200 ships left, all crewed by loyal Council members. These won't surrender or defect like the others. The final battle began at dawn on the Council's capital world. The rebel fleet emerged from hyperspace in a coordinated attack that caught the defenders by surprise. For the first time in their history, the Council faced an enemy that matched their technology and exceeded their numbers. The space battle was fierce and desperate. Council ships fought with the fury of beings who knew their empire was ending. Their weapons carved through rebel vessels, sending thousands of brave fighters to their deaths. But for every rebel ship destroyed, 2 more took its place. General Lisa Parker commanded the ground assault from her command ship. Her forces included human marines, alien warriors who had been slaves for generations, and volunteers from species that had just learned what freedom meant. "First wave, begin landing." "Operations," she ordered. "Remember, our primary objective is the Council's government complex. If we can capture their leadership, we can end this war without destroying their entire civilization." The landing was opposed by automated defense systems that had protected the Council worlds for millennia. Plasma cannons and force fields tried to stop the invasion, but human ingenuity found ways through every obstacle. Major Tony Clark led his soldiers through underground tunnels that the defenders had never expected anyone to use. Meanwhile, Captain Steve Johnson's Special Forces team had been given the most dangerous mission of all. They had to infiltrate the Council's central command and prevent them from activating their ultimate weapon. "According to the intelligence we captured," Johnson told his team, "the Council has a device that can destroy their entire star system. They'd rather see everything burn than let their empire fall." The team moved through the crystal corridors of the Council's government complex, fighting past automated guards and energy barriers. The building was vast, covering an area larger than most human cities, and every step took them deeper into the heart of Council power. Dr. Amy Brooks was with them, her expertise in alien technology proving crucial for navigating the complex's security systems. "The weapons control center should be just ahead," she said, studying her scanner. "But there are massive energy readings coming from that direction." They found the Council's leadership in a circular chamber at the heart of the complex. 12 beings that looked like Zephyr 9 stood around a crystal pillar that pulsed with dangerous energy. These were the rulers who had controlled the galaxy for 50,000 years, and they were preparing to destroy everything rather than accept defeat. "Stop!" Johnson shouted, raising his weapon. "Step away from the device." The lead Council member turned toward them, its form shifting between solid and transparent. "Primitive creatures, you do not understand what you have done. Order has ruled this galaxy since before your species existed. Without us, there will be chaos." "Maybe," Johnson replied, "but it will be free chaos." The final confrontation was brief but intense. The Council members fought with weapons that bent reality itself, but Johnson's team had faced impossible odds. Before, Dr. Brooks managed to reach the weapons controls while the soldiers held off the defenders. "I can shut it down," she called out, "but someone needs to keep them away from the manual triggers." Captain Johnson made the decision that would cost him his life but save billions of others. He charged directly at the Council leaders, drawing their fire away from Dr. Brooks. Energy beams tore through his body, but he kept fighting until the weapon was safely disabled. The death of Captain Johnson marked the end of organized Council resistance. With their leaders captured and their ultimate weapon destroyed, the remaining Council forces surrendered. The war that had started with humanity's defiant declaration was over. Admiral Morrison stood in the same chamber where the final battle had taken place. looking at the crystal pillar that could have destroyed an entire star system. Around him, representatives from dozens of species worked together to establish a new government for the galaxy. "Admiral," Commander Davis said, approaching with a tablet full of reports, "the casualty figures are final. We lost 63% of our original fleet, including over 30,000 personnel." Morrison closed his eyes for a moment, thinking about all the brave men and women who had died to make this moment possible. "And the other species?" "Similar losses, but they consider it a small price for freedom. The Keltons are already talking about naming their new colony ship after Captain Johnson." President Susan Taylor arrived on the Council homeworld 3 days later, aboard a transport ship that also carried representatives from Earth's government. The woman who had declared war on the galaxy now faced the task of building peace. The ceremony took place in the same chamber where the Council had once ruled. Representatives from over 200 species gathered to sign the charter of the new Galactic Alliance. Unlike the Council's empire, this organization would be based on cooperation and mutual respect. "We gather today not as conquerors and conquered," Taylor said in her speech, "but as free beings choosing to work together. The Council ruled through fear and force. We will govern through democracy and consent." The signing took hours, with each species adding their mark to the charter in their own way. Some used traditional signatures, others pressed genetic markers, and a few contributed crystalline patterns that served as their consent. "Admiral," Morrison watched from the side of the chamber, his uniform bearing the scars of countless battles. General Parker stood beside him, both of them thinking about the friends they had lost in the war. "Do you think it will work?" Parker asked quietly. Morrison considered the question carefully. "The Council lasted 50,000 years through oppression. Maybe we can do better with freedom." The final scene of the war took place on a garden world that had once been a Council prison planet. Now it hosted refugee camps for species that were returning to their homeworlds after generations of slavery. Human volunteers worked alongside former prisoners, helping to rebuild lives that had been destroyed by Council rule. Dr. Amy Brooks stood in one of the temporary schools, watching children from a dozen different species play together. Their parents had been enemies or strangers just months ago, but the children saw only friends and playmates. "Dr. Brooks," one of the human volunteers called out, "we've received word from Earth. They want to know when you're coming home." Brooks smiled as she watched a human child teaching an alien child how to play a simple game. "Tell them I'm already home. This is what we fought for. This is what Captain Johnson died for. A galaxy where children can grow up free." The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. Humanity had proven that even the most powerful tyranny could be defeated by those willing to stand up and say no. Now they faced an even greater challenge, building a civilization worthy of the sacrifice that had made it possible. The galaxy was free, and its future was bright with promise.